This is how to spot narcissists who play the victim and the actual victim of narcissistic abuse. How do you differentiate between an actual victim of narcissistic abuse and a narcissist playing the victim? Identifying the difference between the two is vital, but it can be challenging. Today, my goal is to provide you with actionable insights that can help you identify narcissistic behavior and manage toxic relationships better. In this video, I will discuss 3 effective ways to identify the victim of narcissistic abuse versus the narcissist playing the victim. Firstly, we need to understand why a narcissist would act this way. Narcissists always try to escape their guilt and project their feelings of shame onto others. They will reject any wrongdoing on their part, and when confronted, they might resort to manipulation tactics like intimidation and blame shifting. Therefore, when trying to determine who the victim is, we need to look deeper into the connection between the victim and the narcissist. Consider that a narcissist doesn't act from their genuine self, but rather their false self, which indicates that they have no solid inner core. They're like a chameleon in that they can adapt to their environment by constantly changing their appearance. They might hide their true nature by pretending to be a victim and claiming to be terrified of the one who is calling them out on their abusive behavior. Secondly, narcissists see the world in extreme dichotomies, making it easy for them to cast others in negative roles and react emotionally when making allegations. Therefore, an objective observer will conclude that the narcissist has excellent grounds to be angry. However, an outsider is unlikely to assume that the person sitting across from them is a dangerous psychopath. Thirdly, narcissists may intentionally injure themselves to portray themselves as the victim in the relationship. This is a manipulative tactic used by narcissists to make the actual victim feel guilty for their behavior. This is an essential aspect to understand, as it can be challenging for a third party unfamiliar with narcissism or other personality disorders to see through the narcissist's role reversal and DARVO tactics. DARVO here stands for denial, attack, reversing the victim, and blaming the offender. Narcissists often use these tactics to win over their victims. To cut through the noise and recognize the narcissist's manipulative strategies, we need to determine why they are using DARVO. This is a manipulative technique used by the abuser as a weapon against, diversion from, and defense against feelings of guilt and embarrassment. It's a ploy to get out of being accountable for one's actions. So, here are 3 ways to help identify the victim of narcissistic abuse versus the narcissist playing the victim. 1. Examine the evidence. Look for evidence of the abuser's behavior that caused the victim's distress. Is the abuser constantly putting down the victim, belittling them, or gaslighting them? Examine the patterns of behavior to determine who the actual victim is. 2. Listen to the victim's story. Listen to the victim's side of the story and pay attention to the details. Do they seem to be telling the truth? Is there consistency in their story? Is there any evidence to support their claims? 3. Observe the abuser's behavior. Pay attention to the abuser's behavior, body language, and tone of voice. Are they defensive, manipulative, and dismissive of the victim's concerns? Are they projecting their own insecurities onto the victim? Socrates once said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." And in the case of identifying a narcissist or an abuser, it's critical to understand that they lack self-awareness and reflection. The victim, on the other hand, seeks openness and honesty, not to take revenge, but for the liberation that comes with discovering the truth. Narcissists are quick to demonize and blame others for taking the focus away from themselves. They have no interest in self-reflection or exploring their actions. A narcissist's lack of self-awareness also means they won't be able to answer introspective questions that a victim would ask themselves. Asking a victim how they feel about a situation requires compassion and love, while asking a narcissist means getting into specifics about what they did wrong, which they are unlikely to do. So let's say a narcissist or abuser is trying to shift blame and deflect responsibility. If that's the case, they'll be more interested in blaming and demonizing the other party to shift responsibility away from themselves. Due to the fear of facing the consequences of their actions and discovering the truth about who they are, they have little interest in engaging in introspective activities such as self-exploration, dialogue, or self-reflection. A lack of self-awareness and reflection characterizes a person who always places the blame on others. Asking them, "What part did you have to play in this outcome?" is a good indicator of their mental state. A narcissist probably wouldn't know how to respond to that. They may, at best, reply, "Yes, I'm not perfect, and nobody's perfect." In that case, you can inquire about the specific steps they took to achieve that result. If a narcissist admits they were wrong, then it will be tough to ask them to do this. Even if they did admit they were incorrect, it's probable they wouldn't provide specifics about what they did wrong. Narcissists lack self-awareness and typically don't seek personal growth. Consider asking this of someone who has been the victim of narcissistic abuse, because the inquiry implies blame and a lack of belief, if not tempered with love and compassion, and because the victim has been unjustly blamed and gaslighted so often, this may be difficult for them as well. It's possible that this is a tough question for them to answer. Asking the question of either individual requires an attitude of love and compassion. But if the victim gave it some serious thought, they might come up with an explanation like, "For some reason, I was quite nervous. Honestly, I didn't see an alternative. For the sake of my kids, that's what I was considering. A member of my church counseled me to increase my level of love and submission. There was a trauma bonding experience that changed me. He actually made death threats in the event that I were to leave." Then they'll go on to describe recurring instances and behaviors, as well as the impact those things had on them. Typically, a victim wants to share their ordeal, but a narcissist, not so much. They want to avoid responsibility by playing the victim. Conversely, a victim's goals include healing and, if possible, reconciliation. In other words, honesty and facing the truth are necessary to achieve these aims. More stories of their own introspective growth will be told. Their intention is to share their experience after being silenced for so long, rather than harm the reputation of their abuser. They seek release, restoration, and liberation through the discovery of the truth, for it is the truth that sets them free. This brings us to the second way an outsider might spot a narcissist's manipulations. Why is it that the abuser is more likely to speak out than the victim? The narcissist wants to be ahead of the victim's story, so they launch their black campaign, painting themselves as the victim of abuse or betrayal. All of their efforts are directed towards protecting their reputation. Therefore, they are masters at manipulating the news cycle and shaping public opinion. However, victims are so drained by their experiences that they are eager to find a place to rehabilitate and a group of individuals they can trust to listen to their stories. They aren't doing a public relations drive to highlight how badly they've been treated. When a narcissist perceives themselves as the victim and wants revenge on the other person for exposing or betraying them, they tend to break into two camps and view everyone in either camp as good or bad. Their goal will be to have that individual killed or punished. This person's motivation for speaking out is to exact punishment or gain satisfaction from seeing others suffer as a result of their actions. They are not concerned with the victim's recovery or happiness in any way. However, for a victim, the priority is healing, sharing their story, and seeking openness and honesty, regardless of how badly they've been harmed or traumatized by their abuser, for the simple reason that they are sick of being controlled, lied to, and fooled. When they express a desire for their abuser's death or punishment, they are not on a crusade. To be fair, the victim may feel justified in seeking vengeance. It's normal to be torn apart by those emotions. And if the abuser has gotten away with so much for so long, they may be persuaded by the overwhelming desire to see them punished for their wrongdoings. Unlike a narcissist, a victim will not build their tale around their wrath, even if they are experiencing a range of negative emotions, including sadness, loss, fear, and victim. In contrast to the narcissist's tendency to see the world in absolute terms, a victim of narcissistic abuse may usually point to both the positive and negative aspects of the relationship and draw the conclusion that the abuse was merely a cover for the narcissist's true nature. A narcissist, however, can't keep the good, the terrible, and the ugly of the person they abused in one place. That way, they'll remember just the negative aspects of that individual and disregard their positive traits entirely. They will reimagine the relationship in such a way as to make it appear as if everything about it was horrible. This allows them to perpetuate their mission of seeking the person's punishment and ultimate destruction by painting them as an all-evil, awful guy.
Everyone, we have seen how the issue of narcissism can affect people's lives, and identifying the narcissist is not an easy task. So how do you differentiate between an actual victim of narcissistic abuse and a narcissist playing the victim? Narcissists always try to escape their guilt and project their feelings of shame onto others. And in today's video, we just learned 3 effective ways to identify the victim of narcissistic abuse versus the narcissist playing the victim. First, we need to understand that the narcissist doesn't act from their genuine self, but rather their false self, indicating they have no solid inner core. They might hide their true nature by pretending to be a victim and claiming to be terrified of the one who is calling them out on their abusive behavior. Second, narcissists see the world in extreme dichotomies, making it easy for them to cast others in negative roles and react emotionally when making allegations. Therefore, an objective observer will conclude that the narcissist has excellent grounds to be angry. However, an outsider is unlikely to assume that the person sitting across from them is a dangerous psychopath. Third, narcissists might intentionally injure themselves to portray themselves as the victim in the relationship. This is a manipulative tactic used by narcissists to make the actual victim feel guilty for their behavior. This is an essential aspect to understand, as it can be challenging for a third party unfamiliar with narcissism or other personality disorders to see through the narcissist's role reversal and the Darfo tactic. Darfo here stands for denial, attack, reversing the victim, and blaming the offender. Here are 3 ways to help identify the victim of narcissistic abuse versus the narcissist playing the victim. First, examine the evidence. Look for evidence of the abuser's behavior that caused the victim's distress. Is the abuser constantly putting down the victim, belittling them, or gaslighting them? Examine the patterns of behavior to determine who the actual victim is. Secondly, listen to the victim's story. Listen to the victim's side of the story and pay attention to the details. Do they seem to be telling the truth? Is there consistency in their story? Is there any evidence to support their claims? You need to know them all. Third, observe the abuser's behavior. Pay attention to the abuser's behavior, body language, and tone of voice. Are they defensive, manipulative, and dismissive of the victim's concern? Are they projecting their own insecurities onto the victim? Narcissists have no interest in self-reflection or exploring their action, which is why they are quick to demonize and blame others for taking the focus away from themselves. Narcissists' lack of self-awareness also means they won't be able to answer introspective questions that a victim would ask themselves. Asking a victim how they feel about a situation requires compassion and love, while asking a narcissist means getting into specifics about what they did wrong, which they are unlikely to do. In that case, you can inquire about the specific steps they took to achieve that result. If a narcissist admits they were wrong, then it will be tough to ask them to do this. Even if they did admit they were incorrect, it's probable they wouldn't provide specifics about what they did wrong. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching today's video, and once again, thanks for watching.